The Mystery of BELICENA VILLCA. Second Book. The Letter of BELICENA VILLCA. 63rd Day. You will wonder, Dr. Sentinel, how my captors sent me to the hospital, Dr. Patronisla, of the city of Saltac. The answer is joyless simple, but not very difficult to imagine. The infernal agents, who knew the secret that their drugs caused in the human body, and that would result impossible for me to escape, the will to resist, was completely enervated, and, as I said, I have lost completely the external orientation. I could not move from the site in which I was, they had it clear. But then, I had decided to die. I will explain it better. Even though they had broken my will to set free externally, I realized each moment that I conserved intact interior spiritual faculties. The will of my spirit, Doctor, was not broken in the reduced ambit of the consciousness. Perhaps they destroyed part of the psychical structure, but the harm could only be reduced to field of the soul, or the physical brain, that's to say, exclusively to the material terrain. Of course, they could not know with exactitude what had happened with the eternal spirit, because the initiates of the White Fraternity lacked from the capacity to perceive the uncreated beings. But they considered a triumph of their brainwashing techniques when they verified that there were not spiritual manifestations anymore. Precisely, they were referring to the self, the manifestation of the spirit, as indicator of the state of the prisoner. If the treatment ended of the disintegration of the self, it meant that an irreversible process would avoid the spiritual reincarceration. Even though the symbol of the origin be still present in the pure blood, the destruction of the psychic structure turned impossible that the self could be concentrated in the sphere of consciousness again. But, in my case, that didn't occur. As you'll understand, they expected that the ingestion of his psychic drugs be finished in a state of acute schizophrenia. Hope that in my case was reinforced by the confessions that they had obtained to draw out from me. But the real situation consisted in that all what they achieved to obtain in the interrogatory was not voluntary, neither involuntary, but mechanical. Their drugs acted over the conscious subject of the soul, not over the self, and they forced it to overturn the formidable content of the racial memory of the Lords of Tharsis, a qualition of the biologic specialization of my family. With it, presumably the rabbis were not accustomed to treat. Therefore they believed that myself was fragmented, or disintegrated, and that an equilibrated state of spiritual consciousness would never be produced again. The confession demonstrated, for them, the irreversible fracture of the spiritual will. But such confession was just a stupid betrayal of the soul, which subject read the contents of the psychic memories. In a profound sphere, the will of myself resisted in every moment the violation, unable to avoid that the memorial contents be mechanically externalized. Then emerged, for the delight of the rabbis, the remembrances that the memory conserved about the own strategy and its execution. They knew what happened with Noyo, and they went in the act after his steps, supposing to behind them a human residue. However, it is seen, as always, would not result so easy to end, with the Lords of This. What had happened? Well, that I reached to comprehend what consequences were expected from the brainwash, and I achieved to simulate with great conviction the schizophrenic dementia predicted by them. Finally, convinced that my madness had no remedy, they decided to evacuate me from the Franciscan monastery, and internate me momentarily, until the arrival of Barayan Bishar, in a neuropsychiatric hospital. For it, they had to legalize me, that's to say, concede me the juridical status of political prisoner, to obtain the bureaucratic settlement in the hospital, and winnow every future investigation. They started convoking Colonel Victor Perez, military of Hebrew race, who worked for the Shin Bet. He took the case at his charge, and elaborated an expedient full of falseness, in which was registered the alleged subversive activity of my son Noyo, and the support that I'd give him, to him as to the organization in which he militated. He forged the description of the circumstances of the detention, the interrogatories, and the tone of the confessions. and obtained the diagnosis of dementia from a military doctor and from a judge the internation order in the neuropsychiatric hospital Dr. Javier Patronisla. That's how I reached here, Dr. Signal. But that moment, I had decided to die. Yes, estimated doctor, in those days, my only wish was to die with honor, commit suicide, before falling in the fatal claws of Beret and Bishar, and not give to the damn immortals the pleasure of their vengeance, the accomplishment of the sentence of extermination that they were trying to execute since the age of the Iberian kings. I just needed a physical recuperation, and a little absent-mindedness of the medical vigilance, to take my own life away, by any mean. Undoubtedly, doctor, I could have done this, without problems during all the time that I have been interned. To flee, not represented the exit for me, without external orientation, and, anyway, the mission was realized. Noir was guarding the wise sword in secret cavern of Cordoba. And, even if I could not find him, the order of warlord had been fulfilled, and that was the important. So, to die not represented more than a small interlude, until the final battle. I'd go, astrally to Cateraba, and would return soon, to take revenge, against the enemy of the eternal spirit. In the meantime, I would elude the last persecution of Beret and Bishar. That was my thought, when I reached here, Dr. Signal. However, something made me change of idea, when I just got here, and was for this reason, that, even though I continued simulating to be mad, I initiated the redaction of this extensive letter. To be clear, such thing, for which I changed my suicidal intentions, was you, Dr. Signal. In reality, just when I saw you, I comprehended that you had manifested in high grade the symbol of the origin. But, I also appreciated that you were unconscious of that, and that you didn't know even the minimum details of the Hyperborean wisdom. You're a man of pure blood, Dr. Signal. But the memory of blood is obstructed by your soul. You don't know the existence of your eternal spirit, neither how to orientate towards the origin. You suffer of a metaphysic amnesia, which is product of the dark age in which we actually live, own of the enchantment that the potencies of the matter exert over the men, in the great deceit, characteristic of the spiritual decadence of men, and its attraction by the materialist culture. Finally, Dr. Signal, you're an asleep man. But you're a man. A being, gifted with the uncuttered spirit, capable to wake up. Your presence here, in this obscure hospital, I have taken as a sign of the gods, as a message of the Lord of War and Captain Kiev, perchance, as a revelation of the Pontiff, Lord of the Absolute Orientation. When I saw you, Doctor, I comprehended to what was referring to Captain Kiev, when he announced that asleep men would re-establish the ancient nexus with the gods. Such asleep men are undoubtedly similar to you. They have all in their pure blood, but, in potential form, they just need the Hyperborean initiation, to produce that this racial potency be developed, and flourishes in the consciousness. And the Hyperborean initiation, Dr. Signal, today, is only capable to concede it, in this part of the world, the Pontifex Maximus of the Order of Odeon, the Lord of the Absolute Orientation, or the wise constructors who aid him. To transmit you this truth, I changed my decision to die voluntarily. You must have present, Dr. Signal, the ethic perspective of the Lords of Tharsis. For the strategy of spiritual liberation of the loyal gods to the spirit of men, implies much more honor, that I try to wake up you, than the suicide to flee from the infamous reprisals of the immortal demons. Didn't such punishment, the possibility of the terrible end, already considered in the strategy suggested by Captain Kiev? Yes. I decided to wake up you, at least to try it, but how? Without talking with you, because a professional prejudice would have prevented you to give credit to the words of a mentally ill. Perhaps, writing our history in a letter, as the present, but had not escaped from me that I would be, in similar situation. Your incredulity would be anyhow inevitable. Nevertheless, exists the possibility that a concrete fact, not mine, but sufficiently effective, could turn conscious the history of the House of Tharsis. and that fact cannot be anything else than my own death in hands of the immortals Bray and Bishar. It means that I must achieve that the Galeen demons leave enough traces of their immense powers to convince you that in some great narrated history in the letter is real, and I must make that the letter reaches to your hands after my death. Is what I will try to do, Dr. Signal. For now, I have finished the letter, and I have started, since long time ago, to realize the strategy which I believe that will give the expected results. With the last efforts of my graceful Luciferic will, I have tried to go telepathically to Chang Shambhala, towards the members of the Order of Melchizedek, and I have defied to the immortal demons. I have defied them, in the name of the House of Tharsis, which is the greatest defensor for their infernal pride, and now, I wait, not without fear, the answer of Beret and Bishar. I can feel them, Dr. Edshiro Signal, advancing amongst the worlds of the illusion, approaching, blind of hate, towards my humble cell, saving the space and time, dislocating the reality, Peke Shudkiri, Peke Shudkiri.